Good morning, LinkedIn. I hope everybody is well on this Friday. I'm Mel Johnson. I'm a social media coach and consultant, and I'm here today with Lulu Minns to talk to you about creating space for your inner genius. I'll let Lulu introduce herself in a moment, but really the purpose of this live series is to help individuals and business owners kind of get to grips with some of the common business challenges that I hear from people, and one of those is around those inner barriers. So I'm no expert in this subject, so I'm going to leave it all to Lulu to share her wisdom. But if you have got any questions, then just drop them in the chat. Claire's saying she can't try and get in and can't seem to. Claire, are you in now? Because we were a little bit late starting, so we had a bit of a tech issue. Right, Lulu, do you want to introduce yourself while we're
Yes, definitely. Claire knows who I am, so I think she can do that. I'm the founder of She Rebel Radio and a retreat specialist and coach, and I support women, mostly in their 40s and 50s, women leaders, to unleash 30% more of their genius. So I probably work with about 70% women business owners and about 30% of women in corporate environments, etc. And yeah, I love what I do. I'm very honoured to support women to do more in the world.
Cool. So I think one of the things we talked, well, it's all over LinkedIn when we met up last week. One of the things that came out of that conversation is, I think, particularly at the moment, there's a lot of noise out there. You know, we've had a really rocky few years, and there's been a lot of bad news at the moment. You know, people are worried about the economy, they're worried about spending money, they're worried about the recession, and I think that if you already have those internal barriers in place, it can put up another barrier.
Yeah.
Because it almost gives you, I don't want to call it it almost gives you an excuse not to kind of do those things and kind of find your inner genius. And I think that can have a real impact on your business and your marketing, because it just means that you don't show up as yourself, and perhaps you don't really feel brave enough to actually put your ideas out there and shout about why you're different. So Lulu, do you want to talk to us about kind of what is your inner genius? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah,
what do we mean by that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't sound like a typical coach and go, make your excuses your reasons. But it is very true in terms of, but it's also really important to recognise, and I think that's one way that I distinguish the work that I do a lot, is that we have what's going on in the collective and also the individual experience. And that is, particularly for women, that is very relevant, that we share what we might be experiencing in the collective, but also have responsibility in us changing it on our individual journeys, whatever that may be. And yeah, the inner genius, it's something that is beyond your competence and your excellence. And I see women so often get stuck in what I call a curse of competence. You know, particularly if you're a women leader and you're running a business, or you're particularly high up in corporate, you're probably good at everything. Anything you turn your mind to, you can probably do. But you know, when we move more beyond excellence into genius, we have to ask, well, should I actually be doing it? How good am I at it? And is it better that someone else does that and I focus more on my genius? And also, I was reading, there's something magical about our genius as well. A poet called David White, I think he's Irish, which I think a lot of the Irish culture are geniuses in writing and poetry and that kind of stuff. And he said something like, your genius is something you always possess, but you can't actually possess it, which is like, it's always there, but you can't quite grasp it because it's so obvious to you. It's something you're so good at that you think everyone else is as good at it as you are, but they're not. So it can be really hard to pull that out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really, I find that point really interesting, because I think one of the things that I hear quite a lot, and looking at it from a different perspective, is like, oh, everybody knows this, everybody's heard it all before, which I guess relates quite well. So how do we kind of create that? Because, you know, particularly women, you know, a lot of us wear a lot of hats, you know, mum, business owner, carer for elderly parents, you know, pets to look after, all of these different things that we're kind of juggling. So how do we kind of create that space for that inner genius and sort of find the time to do that exploratory work and kind of carve out that space in our business and our lives? What would be your tips?
It's so true for women, and the pandemic again has seen, you know, it being magnified of the caring roles that women take. And it's not my quote, and I can't remember the journalist who said it. It was a number of years ago, but it was something that very inspired me in my work. Is imagine a world where women had the time to develop their genius, and that time is women's biggest factor. And I was thinking about this morning in terms of doing this live with you, and we've kind of met that women are receiving more education now than we were 100 years ago, but actually the time and space thing is a real issue. And I know the organisation Pregnant and Then Screwed have been campaigning massively recently in terms of childcare costs, which in the UK is about 30% higher than the rest of Europe. So that is obviously discouraging women to have that childcare support when they're running businesses or in leadership positions. And that's a real problem that we have to face. But again, I go back to that kind of collective experience or awareness that we have to hold each other accountable as women to create more space for ourselves, and also recognize that in society, space and time is not something that we value very highly, and that is changing. I think the pandemic's seen that change a little bit in terms of that, but I often say contraction is the key to expansion. That's the stepping back is the key to stepping forward. And actually, just adding another layer on that, if the audience are ready for that, contraction is something I call a feminine principle as well. To be graphic, we can't give birth or experience pleasure without contraction. Yet society goes expansion, which is more of a masculine kind of energy, if you like. But we actually need both, because that brings in balance. And particularly as women, as we get a bit older in our 40s and 50s, we need that contraction, that stepping back even more to create that space and holding each other accountable to that. But to kind of answer your question, it's starting somewhere. The busier you are, even if it's just 2 minutes. When I started a meditation practice 7-8 years ago, and I was a defense lawyer, so, I valued myself on being busy, just 2 minutes a day. I was like, if I can just start with 2 minutes, then, who knows what will happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, actually, because I think we're so conditioned to like work. And there's a lady who I was talking about earlier, Jodie Newman, and she's kind of like, you don't get those good ideas you're sitting at a desk.
No.
But it's like the other day I took some, I was trying to do some work on my own business, and I just ended up going out for a walk because I was like, I don't want to sit in the house. I'm sitting here at my desk. I'm not really doing anything because I'm just not in the right kind of headspace. And but I felt really guilty about doing that. Because I felt like I wasn't working, when actually, but the entire time I was almost working because I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. It's and that's, when we're on a laptop or sitting in an office, we're kind of like focused, but when we widen our focus and our perspective by going for a walk or going down the beach or yoga or whatever it might be, my best ideas, one of my best-selling self-study courses, which I'm really reformatting at the moment, is the 3 Keys to Self-Actualization for Women. That came to me on the yoga mat in the pandemic with a hangover, I might add, because I'd got into this Friday night of having my bottle of Prosecco and watching documentaries, and I've been watching the Jeffrey Epstein one and getting really angry that, women were called this, that and the other, and it just like unfolded. But I was really creating space in my body and in my mind by doing my yoga practice and getting myself on the mat. And I was like, oh my God, I've got this idea for this course. I wasn't working. I was supposed to be, and as I said, I'd had a bit of a late night drinking my Prosecco, but that's when the real genius and the ideas really start to come through, and it's not the traditional way that we think.
No, I don't know. I think that's a really valid point. I mean, I think when quite often people say when you're on holiday or whatever, that's kind of when you suddenly think, oh, that's the I mean, I do a lot of writing, and one of the things I find is that it will take me so long to write the first 5 sentences, and I'll sit there, and as soon as I walk away from my laptop, I'm like, oh, that's what I should have written, and I have to kind of, run back or write it down or something. Okay, no, I think that's so Claire said it's interesting sometimes other people can spot your inner genius more easily than you can. I think that's really key, actually, and I think one of the things in business and your marketing is I think most of us are not very good at asking for feedback.
No.
But actually quite often people spot the things that you're good at, and it might not necessarily be the thing that you're kind of talking about or marketing. Yeah. So making that space for creating that inner genius, and and just carving out that time, even if it's 2 minutes a day, what kind of impact do you think that has on kind of us as business owners and how you run your business?
Yeah, so much, for starters, it really does calm our nervous system down. Again, if we're in constant fight or flight mode, which we actually are quite a lot of the time, releasing cortisol into the body, you kind of, we go into, very, very short-term thinking of just solving an immediate, critical problem, and not widening, literally, little things like thinking more positively and writing gratitude. We create more synaptic connections in the brain, and we become more solution focused, and actually creating space for ourselves is so important that we do that. And I think the goal for most business owners is work less and earn more. And again, we can do that when we actually create more space. And just to go back to something that Claire said, and you just said there, Mel, in terms of asking other people, go and ask other people, make a point of it. I do it. I missed it out last year because I think in 2021 we were in lockdown for half of it. But going back to your best clients and asking them what it is about you, why they work with you, and what they get out of that, because they give you a real indication of your genius. And also, friends and family that you're around, go and ask them, what do you think I'm better at than anyone you know, and get super, super curious about that. Because then people start to drop it in, and you really start to notice and go, oh, okay, so how can I do more of that? And, I think we have to try all things in our business, because that does give us clarity. But there's no point in flogging a dead horse, as it were. If there's something you're really not great at, and you're keep on going and doing it, and you don't enjoy it, that's another indication as well. And it's not, don't get out of your comfort zone and not try it, but it's when you've tried all the things. This is a great time of year, this end of year. Letting go is quite a good thing for autumn, of going, actually, what has worked and what hasn't. And when we create the space to do that and work, on the business, not in it, you can really start to separate and go, actually, I'm not going to, and I'm not telling business owners to not send a weekly email, but maybe you're not so good at writing sales emails.
Yeah.
Find a way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think one of the things, there's two things here, is that a lot of people, their business is their baby. And I think as women, we really kind of try and do everything ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I think the outsourcing part is quite difficult, and actually that would give you more time to focus on your genius. But I think carving out that space and doing that work is really important, because I think if we've got those barriers and we're not sure what we're good at, that makes it really difficult for us to do our marketing.
Yeah.
Because we're not, and I'm not talking so much about niching here, but because it makes it really difficult to kind of clearly share your value proposition and who you work with. And it makes it really difficult to show up as yourself, because you're still kind of working out who that self is.
Yeah.
And I think, most of us are in a really competitive space.
Yeah.
Where, there are lots of people that do similar things to us. They might do them in a different way, but people don't actually know what that different way is.
Yeah, and as you say that I think I've got a podcast episode on this. It's one of the early ones. Is like identity before strategy. Sorry, the cat's deciding to get involved. Identity before strategy, or strategy before identity is futile, because we do need to really work out who we are and what our voice is and what it is that we're trying to say. And you do need space and often support from other people to be able to do that and work out what that is. So many people said to me over the years, how long have I run She Run Radio? About 3 years. Oh, should I do a podcast? And it totally depends on you and what you're good at. I used to be a litigator. I've always presented to a certain degree, although I was super shy when I was a teenager and things like that. I really had to bring that out. But there's nothing that you should be doing. It's really, and again, getting curious with yourself and going, what am I better at than anyone I know? And again, women will go, oh, well, nothing, I'm not better at, so we try but just play with yourself there and kind of go, actually, what can I do better than other people that I know, and then go and do more of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. And I think we are, again, going back to that kind of whole noise and with the marketing thing you hear a lot of, oh, you should be doing this. You should have a podcast is a prime example. You know, you should be doing live video regularly and all of these shoulds. And as somebody commented on LinkedIn, if it's who's a marketer, if it starts with should, then quite frankly, I think it should go in the bin.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I think you need to, like you say, I think being really clear on who you are, what your value proposition and what you're good at. And actually, I think if we were talking about a sort of set from a business perspective, actually, as you said, what you enjoy and what you want to sell.
Yeah, yeah, so important. Yeah.
I mean, I built an online course during lockdown, an online social media course, which obviously needs quite regularly updating with the walkthrough videos and things because there's a lot of changes. And I haven't relaunched it this year because I just haven't, because it's a kind of off the shelf, do it in your own time product. And I just, as a person, like I'm not very transactional. I like to have that kind of support.
Yeah.
Supportive part of it. And I know when you do training, you have no control with what people do with that information. And most of us need the accountability to actually take those actions to follow it through. But I just, for me, it's just not something that I kind of feel confident with that. And I know a lot of business owners that fall into that space, but because women are really bad for this, we continue to flog that dead horse.
Yeah. And it's this, you know, trying to, you know, potentially prove ourselves, not necessarily to anyone else, but to ourselves. And it's important to remember that, you know, as women, we've, you know, we've only been deemed as people in the law in the UK for 100 years. That's not a long time, you know. Right. So, you know, entering world of business and things like that, we can be, you know, almost grateful to be there and be like, oh, well, I can do this and I can do that. And, you know, but it's really, you know, an example is a client of mine, you know, a digital agency business, etc. Incredible at what she does, but, you know, was actually doing the campaign, you know, the detail of the campaign. And that's not her genius. Her genius is creating it, the big idea. I was like, why are you wasting your time doing this? You know, the more you really commit to what it is that you really are great at, the more you're going to be paid and you can get other people in to do the other stuff. And yes, in the beginning, we have to do all of that. And it may be a process of really working that out. But then when you do, you know, like tech is really not my thing. And I have never edited my own podcast, and neither will I. In fact, if there's a little chunk where I wasn't really producing anything because I was going to do it myself because the cost kept on going up, and then I was like, have a word with yourself, Lulu, you know, take your own advice. It's just, you're really not good at it. It would take you hours. So I just found a different solution instead. And, you know, I was like, I need to stay in my zone.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Like I recorded a short video, and I needed to cut a couple of seconds out of the middle, and it was in YouTube, and it says you can do this, and I couldn't do it. I tried for ages, so I asked somebody very nicely who is a video editor. I was quite happy to pay him because I was like, this is literally a 2-minute job for him. And he was like, well, I'll just do it for you. It's fine, which was obviously incredibly kind. But I was like, I could have sat there for 2 hours. Yeah. And there's lots of other things that I could be doing in that time. So I think, it's really important to just kind of let that go. And I think once you've found that inner genius and you've kind of worked out what the things you need to focus on that are good, it makes it much more easier to attract clients because you're really clear about what you do and don't do.
Yeah.
I don't like the word authentic because I think it's a little bit overused, but that, I think the other part of the working on that inner genius and then breaking down those barriers is that it enables you to show up as you.
Yeah.
And not worry so much about what other people are thinking of you, because not everybody is going to be your
cup of tea. No. And, you know, actually, you know, when people start to unsubscribe from your list, sometimes I really see that as a positive thing, because it means I'm working on something and I'm shifting, and I'm actually cutting the bottom line of like, actually, you know, I don't want to work with like this chunk of people, because we should refine every year, and don't see, you know, I'd ask people watching to, you know, you don't just suddenly get your zone of genius. It's like you don't suddenly become happy and that's it for the rest of your life, right? You know, it's a journey. Not to sound cheesy with that, but there's always another layer and always another refining it, and have fun with that process. You know, and one thing that I, you know, when I first started coaching, I coached with cameras because I thought I had to, and people were paying me and they wanted to see me. And then I tried without it, and then I went back to it because, you know, people wanted that. But now I totally own it. I do not coach with cameras. I'm highly intuitive. Half the time I'm looking over here, I'm not looking at that person. I'm not seeing the cat walk past or anything else, but I am listening so intently to what is happening. But, you know, I'm the expert in that, and I just tell people why I do it like that, and my clients accept that now, you know, because I own that I'm not going to, you know, necessarily give people what they want, because I know my coaching, if I'm online, this is better without cameras. That's, you know, I coach in a very different way to maybe other people that may follow a pro forma. I don't. You know, as I said, I might be looking into space. You know, there's lots of transformation there. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's really interesting. But yeah, I think you do have to be kind of clear about how you do things and why you do them. So, and you said, yeah, I think I always think autumn's a kind of great time to sort of you review the year and then think about actually what is it I want to be doing.
Yeah. And when I look
back, need to be.
Yeah, and when I look back over, I think is it eight years I've been in business now, and it's even this time of year that I quit my job in legal practice 8 years ago. So it's a great, you know, like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I've had enough of it. You know, throw it out, and also I think noticing other people's zone of genius. I noticed, you know, we talked about doing this live and what might be included. But, you know, when we met up the other week, we were talking about all sorts of other things, as you put in a post of like, you know, nights in Brighton. We didn't really talk about this that much, but you being a marketer and a content creator, you've just gone, right, bang, we're doing bang, 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 you know, but we didn't need to have a real in-depth conversation of, oh, well, should we, and then this, and then this. It was just because that's what you do. That's your genius, is go, right, bang, 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 let's write this and create content out of it.
Thank you.
So I see that.
Well, I don't know if anybody's got any questions for us. I'm just reading Claire's comment. Is it helpful to think about what tires you out, as those things are probably the things that aren't your strengths and which you should stop doing, so that you can create space for focusing on the things that use your inner genius? That's very true. Yeah, I think we've shared quite a lot in the 23 minutes. But Lulu, I think one of the things that you wanted to talk about particularly, I'm quite excited about, is your something that's coming up in January.
Yes.
Which is nice into what we've been talking about.
Yeah, no, it does definitely. Claire and I, Claire Griffith from Thrive, get my T's out and my F's. We're doing. We've brought together our superpowers and are collaborating. We've collaborated before with you know, lives and webinars and things like that. But it's the first time we've done an in-person event. We're doing a Female Founders Away Day on the 26th of January at the Harbour Hotel in Brighton, and yeah, it's going to be a really, really powerful day where, you know, we're reflecting on the year that has gone by so quickly. This year has absolutely flown by, setting intentions and getting clarity and creating an action plan for you in 2023, which January is a great time to do that and set those intentions, you know, particularly as you said, Mal, you know, there are difficult times ahead. That is quite clear. And instead of, you know, us going and hiding, we really need to step into more of that and, you know, get really clear as to what needs to go and what you need to step forward with. And one thing I was going to say, which really ties into your genius, is, you know, owning more of your territory. You know, it's in the global population, as you said, you know, there are so many other people doing what you're doing. And, you know, my parents were business owners. They used to run a shop. You know, their competition was people down the road. You know, it wasn't the whole world maybe, you know, doing their own thing. So in a nutshell, the world has got too big for a hierarchy of, you know, but you need to really own your space and your territory, and really know what that is. And we know the incredible things that happen when women come together and collaborate in that environment and in that space. And it's going to be, you know, a small, intimate group. We've got early bird available at the moment with spa access, because we like to bring in, you know, the space and the retreat style for our early birds especially.
I think that's the thing, and I think one of the things that a note that I just want to end on, I made it, obviously content marketing, so I spend quite a lot of time online, but I'm a real people person, and I made a decision at the beginning of the year that I was going to try and kind of have as many one-to-ones off the back of my networking as possible, and, you know, actually kind of try and leverage the relationships that I was building, because I'm a real believer that your, particularly social media, should support those relationships you're building offline, but not the other way around, because they are warmer. And I think it's like that was intention for me. And I think one of the things that's come out of that is, yes, of course, I've got, you know, I get more referrals, more business, but it's that real, like the real power of collaboration and actually having the space to talk about your business is just so, and feel supported is just so important, because I think, you know, working on your own can be really isolating.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know everything, you don't have all the ideas. And I think quite often as well, like friends and family with the best intentions, they say things like, how's work going? And what they want you to say, and I could be wrong, is, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, particularly if they are people who have got, you know, they might really care about their job, but ultimately, if they're in paid employment, they go into the office, they come home, and it's just not quite the same thing. And I think people don't necessarily understand that. So it's really good to have that support network, I think, and that space to just carve out that thinking time and learning time, and, you know, learning from other people.
Yeah, and it's you know, when you run your own business, I remember I was so desperate to get out of legal practice and away from some of my colleagues. Actually, were driving me mad at the time. And then I was like, oh God, I'm on my own. Like, and then you know, you can almost feel like you're going a bit mad, because you're just spinning, you know, your own ideas, and, you know, it can feel really difficult. And it's also, you know, and with loved ones, etc., as you say, how's work? And it's not just sharing the hardships. You know, they get a certain level of it, but they don't get the real, like, I'm really stuck, and they don't get the celebrations as well. You know, when you've created something new, whatever, and you start selling it and you're really excited, and they're kind of like, oh yay. You know, it's just not the same response that you get when you're doing it with someone else, or just being another business owner that really understands, you know, and again, particularly for women, our heart and soul that we put into what it is that we do, and how that we serve other people, and you know, particularly as service-based business owners as well, we're not even selling a tangible thing. It's you know, it can be really hard. So that support is key, and that space for women is absolutely key. That's another reason I really committed to retreats over the last few years. Is, you know, women get so much out of collaborative space and just having space and being in a different environment from their everyday.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, well, thank you very much for joining me. I think that's it from us, unless anybody's got any questions or comments. But do reach out to myself or Lulu if you would like to find out a little bit more, or just want to have a chat. But yeah, happy Friday, everybody. The sun's actually shining, which I'm quite relieved about. Cool. So
yeah, thank you. I was just going to say thanks so much for having me, Mel. And yeah, if anyone would like to connect, please do. And yeah, have an amazing Friday.
Thank you.